With only 2 episodes left, anticipation is at an all-time high over how the series will end. The king is finally going to learn why his mother died, and viewers are curious to know if his fury will cause a purge, or if he'll be able to keep his promise to JiYoung. What's more, little does the king know that his journal became Mangunrok, which will take JiYoung back to her time, when he named it after the magic book. Meanwhile, with the conclusion near, viewers can't help but feel bittersweet, as Bon Appétit, Your Majesty, has been a source of delight and entertainment. Though the last danger was averted, new trouble looms ahead for the king and JiYoung, as the cunning Prince JeSan finally puts his schemes into motion. Sadly, this also signals the end of JiYoung's extraordinary journey to the past, just when she had chosen to remain in Joseon, with the king she's grown to love. Looks like they packed all the sweetness in the last episode, to prepare the viewers for the temporary heartache to follow. What's more, fans finally got the romance they've been craving, a heartfelt kiss between the star-crossed lovers. The Grand Prince's incident forced the king to confront his feelings for his chef, while JiYoung, once oblivious to her own heart, accepts his ring, on one condition, that he never return to his tyrannical ways. But with the odds stacked against them, will the king be able to keep his promise, and can their love truly survive, when time itself threatens to tear them apart? As for Prince JeSan and Mokju, their scheming finally reaches its peak, and all hell breaks loose. Yet, no matter his sly maneuverings, Prince JeSan is destined to fail. History records that King Yeon was succeeded not by him, but by the king's younger half-brother, Grand Prince JinSeong, later known as King Yeongjong. This was why JiYoung showed a little interest when she heard the prince's name. If you recall, she also thought for a minute in episode 5, when she first learned that Prince JeSan was part of the royal family. Something piqued her interest, but she dismissed it. Prince JeSan's plan has always been to drive the king to fury, leading to a purge, which will serve as a justification for his coup. This was why he installed Mokju close to the king, to keep the fire about his mother's deposition burning in his heart. However, their plans were foiled when JiYoung arrived at the palace, gradually bringing peace to the king's heart, stirring it away from Mokju and her toxicity. Mokju isn't just vexed that the king lost interest in his late mother's deposition, but that JiYoung was able to have the king's heart. This was the reason she killed Gongil's sister, because she competed for the king's heart. What's more, the story behind the late queen's death is finally going to unravel in the next episode. It's obvious that the Queen Dowager and the other consorts had something to do with it. This is why the consorts have always been concerned about the king finding out, and why Min-sung, the Queen Dowager's brother, is antsy about the king discovering how his mother died. However, there seems to be more than meets the eye. There must be a reason. The Queen Dowager declared that she'd make the same decision all over again, if they were to go back in time. Maybe, his mother had been a good mother to him, but had done something sinister. He had been a child, and might not have been privy to his mother's activities. If you recall, the consort said it wasn't their fault, as his mother had done something disgraceful. So far, the Queen Dowager has shown that she's his ally. When she first noticed the change in him, after the first palace competition, she invited him for tea, but still steaming with anger over his mother's death, the king turned her down. This didn't stop her from looking out for him, and schooling him when needed. She also showed her trust in him, during JiYoung's fiasco. This was when her sincerity finally got through to the king. Did you notice how he called her name? This is also behind the reason he intends to dance for her during her 70th banquet, because the Queen Dowager had loved watching him dance as a child. However, Prince JeSan plans to turn this day into a tragically memorable one. Learning that the king was after the draft, which documented his mother's death, Prince JeSan sent his men to attack the drafter, stole the draft, and held the drafter hostage. This was why the king was unable to find the drafter. Prince JeSan plans to use the draft to his advantage, to cause unrest. What better way to lend authenticity to the draft than having the original drafter present the draft? He knows that the king's allies, the Han family, to which the Queen Dowager also belongs, had a hand in his mother's death. He hopes revealing this will drive the king to madness, causing a bloodbath in the palace. To achieve this, he intends to use the king's mentally challenged maternal grandmother. She has the garment the queen worn when she was deposed. The garment will reveal that she was poisoned, and didn't die from an illness, like the consorts wanted the king to believe. He's banking on the king losing his cool. But then, the king has already promised JiYoung not to become a tyrant. In the preview, he can be seen initially miffed on learning how his mother died, and those behind it. The palace can be seen drenched in blood and corpses. However, this is bound not to be the outcome. Given how he loves JiYoung, and his belief that she's from the future, the king is bound to keep his cool at the last minute. If someone were to go off the chain, it could be the jester, Gong-gil, who just learned in the last episode that Mok-ju was behind his sister's death. If you look closely, you can see that he has on the same attire as the king. He had been plotting the whole time he was close to the king. He thought that the king was behind his sister's death, which is why he agreed to eliminate him. This explains why he hadn't told the king about his uncle being behind the rising coup. Everyone thinks that Prince JeSan is an idiot, as he's wanted them to believe. Hence, why the king hasn't suspected that his uncle is plotting treason. Now that he knows that Mok-ju is behind his sister's death, he's bound to find a way to get to her. What's more, in the midst of trying to survive, JiYoung had forgotten to deliver Bailong's words to the king. If not the jester, then Prince JeSan must have sent someone in as the king. The king will not betray JiYoung's trust in him. However, this will not stop the king from confronting his paternal grandmother, the Queen Dowager. Hopefully, he shows more faith in her, as she'd shown in him. Did you notice the reason behind the Queen Dowager's dagger to JiYoung in the last episode? Queen JeHyun was ready for any outcome, and wouldn't mind taking JiYoung's life, since her son's life was hanging by a thread. The king is bound to retaliate if this were to happen, as he asked her to overthrow him, if she wants to punish JiYoung. The Queen Dowager knew that neither the king, who has strong feelings for JiYoung, nor Queen JeHyun, who's consumed with sadness over her son, would concede to one another. Queen JeHyun has the Han family backing, which would spell trouble for the king. So the Queen Dowager gave JiYoung the dagger, to end her life herself if she fails to prove her innocence, which would stop the matter from escalating. Thankfully, it didn't come to that. Meanwhile, who else noticed Cook Man-soo's subtle feelings for Gilgwem? Gilgyeom first had her heart stolen by the jester, but Cook Man-soo has taken an interest in her for a while now. He didn't hesitate to step up when he realized that she was going after the king herself. I'd say that they are better suited for one another, and would carry on JiYoung's teachings after her time in Joseon. Meanwhile, Mok-ju selfishly sacrificed her trusted maid in the last episode. You'd think that she'd stop here, but that's not the case. This time, she plans for JiYoung to be kidnapped. You know what they say about hell, having no fury like a woman scorned. Despite knowing that she had no good intentions for the king, Mokju decides to act like a woman scorned. She plans to see this to the end. You would wonder why the king hasn't found out about her dead maid. You'd think an investigation would reveal the person who visited before her death. What's more, she lures JiYoung away from her crew. The poor eunuch is shot, and JiYoung is kidnapped by rebels. If you think the king had controlled his fury upon learning the reason behind his mother's death, he's bound to lose it upon learning of JiYoung's kidnapping. His promise to JiYoung keeps him grounded, but doesn't stop him from going after her kidnappers. Sadly, this won't end well for the lovebugs. If you recall, in the last episode, when the king proposed to JiYoung, he had said that he doesn't want to find the book Mangunrok, which they believe would take her back to her time. Little did he know that his journal became Mangunrok when he named it after the magic book. The king had subconsciously known that JiYoung was from the future, but refused to believe it, as it made no sense at the time. Her dressing, the way she spoke, and the gadgets in her hands were easy giveaways. Now, his journal has the power to send JiYoung back to her time. It finally makes sense why the book was dedicated to a lover in the future, asking her to come back to him. The king rides with his guards to find JiYoung, while JiYoung tries to escape from her captors. However, this somehow doesn't end well for them, as JiYoung ends up going back to her time, just when she'd agreed to stay back with the reformed tyrant king. On a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious are you for the grand finale? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this content, please give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell for all things wonderfully K-drama. Thanks for watching, bye.